Welcome to this session. Are we there yet? This is a session talking about navigating the short, middle and long term of youth travel. So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on youth travel. I have three very esteemed travel professionals and colleagues here with me this afternoon. And we're going to look at the outlooks on the short, the middle term and the long term of youth travel, and how as an industry and as travel professionals we're going to navigate our way through those. I'm hopeful that you're going to find this as a very interesting session. Let me just get the video up. Can you see that? Okay, so what I would like to do first of all is just to introduce ourselves. My name's David Chapman. I'm the Director General of WISE Travel Confederation. We are the global trade association for organisers dealing in youth, student and educational travel. And what I'd like to do is to introduce each of our panellists and ask them to introduce themselves to you and what they do in relation to youth travel. So, Claire, if I can start with you, please.
Yeah. My name's Claire and I work for the Corry group. We are 5 brands. We are in 8 different markets in Scandinavia, Benelux and the UK. And today I'll be speaking mainly on behalf of the Corry brand, which is our youth and student brand.
Thank you. And Deliana.
Hello, I'm Deliana. I'm the sales manager, or lover as we used to say, of Yellow Square, our hostel chain born in Italy that is currently expanding on other European countries. Yellow Square was born with the intent of being more than just a hostel, but like more of a hub for travelers and locals to meet.
Thank you very much. And Christina, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina. As mentioned, I head up the global land operations team for EF World Journeys, which is a leader in group-guided experiential travel. And today I'm here representing one of our tour operator brands, which is EF Ultimate Break. We work with 18 to 35-year-old travelers, primarily out of the United States and Canada.
Thank you very much indeed. So I suppose the next question to ask is to talk about what is youth travel. The power of transition is this year's theme at ITB. And interestingly, what we know about young travellers is that they're pioneers. They're a transitional force, and they prompt shifts in mainstream tourism. They're also a very stable segment of the market, resilient to all sorts of different external effects that can restrict travel. Last year on this stage, we briefly discussed the contraction and the consolidation of youth and student travel businesses since COVID-19. Some of the big brands and agencies specialising in this market are no longer here. But obviously a lot of them still are here, which is very good news. Our research through 2022-2023 also showed that there was a small uptick in the use of traditional travel agents. So the question the question that I'm going to ask now is, are young travellers still opting to use traditional travel agents, or are they more looking to book directly? And how have things changed now that we're a few years out from the pandemic? So Claire, can I come to you first on that one?
Yep. We are still seeing an increase. What we've seen since COVID-19 is that there are a lot of female travellers. We still see that. That's increasing. One of the things we're looking at in 2025 is, where are the guys? So that's one of the things we're looking into in 2025. But we see that sense of security, of reassurance, also from parents actually, still is driving people towards looking for somebody else to support them and give them that advice. So we still see it very relevant for us to have that opportunity to speak directly to our customers.
And Christina, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think we've also seen an increase. We see that travel agents, or tour operators as we are, is very attractive. And I think it really, in part what we see is comes back to also how young travelers are doing their research, where social media is much more prominent. So they're looking to us to kind of provide the nuts and bolts of a travel experience through accommodation, flights, and transportation and such. But that leaves more time for them to take care of the extras and through their research figure out kind of where and when they want to eat or what they want to eat, what are the photo stops that they want to make, kind of more of the details of the tour. So I think that's why they're coming to us.
And this comment, Claire, that you were talking about just now about the female traveller, again, that's something that we've seen very much coming through in our research. What do you think is driving that? And are they travelling singularly, or are they travelling in small groups or larger groups? How's it working?
What we've seen is that they are quite attracted to what we now have as concepts, as group concepts. So it's people traveling individually, but looking to travel with other like-minded travelers. So we have seen a rise in, we have a brand, TripMates, which is organized trips now, and that is becoming more and more attractive. So there's perhaps in the past that sort of going out pioneering, traveling on your own is now trending more towards still traveling on your own, but traveling as a more curated group.
Interesting. And Christina, are you finding the same?
Yeah, I'm sitting here nodding. We find that a lot of travelers come to us as solo travelers, but they're looking for that community, right?
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
both in terms of meeting locals where they go, but also in finding like-minded people on the trips.
And what about in the accommodation sector? How are you seeing the same thing transitioning through there?
We see the same thing, the exact same thing. Like, actually, we started seeing more girls a few years ago, like literally more girls at reception, at the bar, looking for activities to do, to meet new people, because they were traveling alone. So we said, okay, we might as well look at our data. And we actually saw a year-over-year increase of female solo travelers, or female travelers in general who choose female dorms for safety reasons, for security reasons. And one of the main reasons they traveled alone, at least from our experience, was the willingness to do things for themselves, to learn things, but they were no more willing to wait for someone else to do the same. So they go out for themselves to look for these experiences and look for like-minded people to do that, and hostels are also a way to do that.
And a question to all three of you: have you adapted your product offerings to cater for this, or does your product offering already cater for that single-sex market?
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, absolutely. The concept that I referred to earlier, TripMates, is specifically designed for solo travelers who want to travel with like-minded people.
Yeah.
So we have been continuously developing new itineraries that cater just for that segment. And our other brand, Eoghan, has been doing that as well with their backpacker adventures. So we really see that what we're providing has an audience.
Great. Christina?
We are starting to think about tours that are more designed for women as such, but I think for us it's really about inclusivity as well, and not necessarily turning certain customers away. So for us, we do see a higher proportion being females, but we find also that both females and males are coming on solo onto our trips. So we're not necessarily designing tours specifically right now for them, but we do see a lot of females coming onto our tours. Yep.
Okay. Deliana, anything?
As a hostel, we saw this increase in demand for female dorms. So we literally increased the numbers of dorms specifically for women, because this is a request that they make from a point of wanted to feel more safe, more in a space shared by other women. But other than that, yes, our product is more inclusive towards everyone who wants to join our activities and everything we do.
Thank you. Okay, just moving on. According to a lot of our research where we've looked at motivations, the main motivations for travel amongst young people have not really changed very much over the last 20 years. The changes, however, that did register in our last survey was an increased interest in interacting with local people whilst travelling, and very interestingly, a much more of an intent to find relaxation within their travel, and I think a certain element of security, rest, and so on, within avoiding stress within travel. So what shifts or transitions have you noticed within your young customers, and how have you gone about sort of marketing and pushing forward these areas? Christina, can I ask you that first?
I think what we've seen in several ways is this urge to get off the beaten track a little bit more. We see that the curiosity is expanding far beyond Europe, and things that maybe weren't as accessible 15, 20 years ago have become very accessible now through social media. So they're looking towards Asia, Latin America. We see big growth in Japan, Thailand, Costa Rica, Peru, to mention a few. And even within Europe, I think they're diversifying where they're going more. So we're seeing growth in places like Portugal, Scandinavia, Ireland. But then also, regardless of where they're going, they are trading kind of some of the hallmark landmarks, so to say, for more kind of local experiences, whether it's meeting locals or learning more about the local culture versus the checking the tick box, as it were. So
perhaps avoiding some of the larger corporate tourist attractions and those types of things, always looking more towards the local, engaging more with the local product.
Exactly.
And the local
so I think it's a balance of the two, but there's certainly, we feel that we are revamping our itineraries and our inclusions to cater more towards the off the beaten track and the local immersion experience.
It's certainly something that's been very consistent with what we've seen in our researches from 2002 onwards. Claire, what about you in terms of this interaction?
I think youth travel has always intrinsically been that way. Youth travel always are looking to travel in a way that is perhaps more price conscious. Yep. So by doing that, they're looking at homestays, they're looking at living in local communities. But what I think is something that is questionable is how local is a local experience, because once the local experience becomes part of an itinerary, it becomes commodified. And then is it a local experience anymore if 20,000 people are going for the same local experience? So I think to actually, turn off your phone and just look where you are, get lost, ask somebody local the directions. That is when you actually start to be local, not go to the restaurant that's recommended on Instagram or on TripAdvisor, but actually just wander around and find somewhere and go somewhere. But there's always that need to document everything you do, and everybody wants to be a first mover. But once the first mover's been there first, everybody who follows isn't a first mover anymore. So I think it's a difficult balance, how local is being local. And when you refer to stress as well, we find that young people still want to pack a lot into a very short amount of time. So what we try to do, what we encourage our travel advisors are encouraging people who come to us to do is say, take 2 days where you actually don't have anything planned. And one of the things I've learned in the last couple of days is this new word, which is JOMO. You might or might not have heard of that, but it's actually the joy of missing out, which is the complete opposite to what everybody's been rushing to do the whole time. So I think that's what we're trying to encourage, at least customers that come into us to do, is to actually take a couple of days where you don't have anything planned and don't panic about it. Just see what happens.
There had to be an antithesis to FOMO, really, didn't
there?
There
did.
I'm really pleased that we found it at long last.
I love it.
Daliana, how about the hostel product? What have you been doing to try and, help this sort of local interaction and also the whole relaxation, lack of stress that's there as well?
Yes, as I was mentioning before, we as hostels try to be part of the city we're in. We don't like the hostel to be a separate entity that does not interact with the local community. We want the locals to come in and use our spaces and meet the travelers that choose to stay with us. So this is a start, mixing the spaces and making people meet, starting from the hostel. This is giving a local experience because the locals are coming to us. So also the travelers are in a sort of way living a local experience. And yes, we also saw an increase in the average length of stay. And this led us to focus on the length of stay promotion. Because of course, for young travelers, price is still one of the main factors when choosing their accommodation. And we saw that longer stays has fewer operational costs. Then this allows us to give a better price, and this starts like a virtuous cycle. So we can give them a better price so they can enjoy a longer stay and have more time, as Claire was saying, to enjoy local experience without having nothing planned and just live.
I can just add to this as well, kind of touching on both of these points. We're also we've expanded our offering of more longer city stays to create that space, right, where you have the chance to get lost, right, in a city, as you said, and figure it out on your own and really have that local immersion. So it is an interesting balance because, to that point, a lot of travelers do want to see as much as possible, right, for their hard-earned money. But at the same time, how do you create that space for them to have free time for themselves?
Yeah, and again, I think it's another interesting point that wise research has shown over the years is younger people do tend to stay longer in a destination. Yes, they're spending less per night on accommodation, but across their entire stay, generally speaking, the younger travellers are actually spending more than a traditional tourist, albeit that it's over a longer period of time. They are spending more on their trip. So this whole thing of extending their trip. I liked what you were saying about the fact that they're staying longer means that you have slightly lower operational costs, which means that you can provide people with a slightly better pricing, is also very self-sustaining, which is great. But it just goes to show that the value of the youth traveller, which is often under-recognised, is really playing through here, and that communities really should be feeling the benefit of having young people in their destinations. And I think this is something that from an advocacy point of view that we're always trying to say is that embrace the young travellers because they are good for your community, they're good for your local economy. And there's far too many people that are thinking that the five-star traveller is the one that they should be attracting. But it isn't necessarily. Anyway, thank you for that. We're going to move on a little bit now, and we're going to start trying to look a little bit more at some of the short-term areas. And the first one that I'm going to look at, I think I've gone a slide too far, no I haven't. The first one I'm going to look at is online travel agents. So online travel agents, OTAs, and the platformization of information, goods, services. How would you summarize the current relation between OTAs and consumers? Are there any notable consumer patterns and behaviors that have changed? And do you think that these are attributable to the OTAs and what they're providing, or is it more other e-commerce platforms or other informational sources? Quite a convoluted question there.
I'm happy to spend a few minutes on it. I think for us, the OTAs are really, they're forcing us to stay on our toes. I think OTAs often supply a richness of detail and flexibility for travelers in their bookings and kind of serve up a lot of information for them to make decisions very quickly at that point. And it's ensuring, or it's forcing us to compete with those high demands, right? So we are also really pushing to create more detailed richness on our website and in the information that we provide. We have to be much more flexible in kind of changing of dates and departures and tours that they want to go on, and very last minute sometimes. And also it's forcing us to really look at our e-commerce platform and look at the ease of usage, right, and the checkout process, or offering more types of payment methods for them. So I think it's good. It's pushing us all in that direction.
Yes, it's often the OTAs sometimes, and this is an experience I had recently. I tried to book a hotel room directly with the hotel because I preferred to do it like that, but they couldn't give me the same service that Booking.com could. Mm-hmm. So that particular company lost out, and I ended up booking, a commissionable rate through Booking.com, which is a shame. But I think it's great that people are using the OTA to provide that base level and then adding more information and more content to what's being out there for people to look at. Yeah, Daliana, how does it work with you guys?
As an accommodation, of course, we have to confront ourselves with OTAs. Right now, every traveler one of their steps is going to OTA to check, to shop around, to see their options. So there is no way escaping that. And we have to be competitive not only under the price point, but also under the side of online reputation and reviews. Because now, as for other e-commerce platforms, guests and travelers rely a lot on reviews and feedbacks from other guests. And this is a well-known fact. The thing is, lately, the reviews are not only the reviews on the OTAs or the Google reviews. The opinion and the feedback are expanding on social media, on blog, or Reddits. So the attention that we need to put in online reputation is increasing a lot. And we have to be very careful about this.
And do you use technology for that, or do you have a team of people that are following all these various routes through? Because
a mix of both, because replying to reviews is a really time-consuming task. So, of course, reading reviews and taking information from the feedback is crucial, and we have platforms for that. Regarding the reply, we reply to every review, but yes, to reply to review, we use technology to that, because it would be too much, but it's always a mix. For example, if you write a bad review, you should expect a human. But if you write a good review, I'm not talking about my company, I'm talking in general. You should not expect a human to write your reply. Like checking, reviewing it, of course. But writing it, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so looking now at market intelligence and looking at resources. So what type of resources are you using to make decisions on youth-tailored travel products? How are those tools evolving and changing now compared to how they used to be? Claire, can I come to you on that question?
I mean, what you can't avoid now is AI. I mean, it's still very new for us all. It's very new for us as well, and we're finding out the best way to use it now. But I think we're using AI to as a tool to analyze reports, analyze research, gather data, and be quicker at finding these trends, these patterns, and using it in a way that we can get through a lot of the information that's out there, things that would take us a long time in the past. So in that respect, AI is now a very useful tool that we can't, live without, and I think it's going to be the future. But finding the best way, the most optimal way to use it, we aren't there yet at all. And we actually have somebody in the company now who's just dedicated to figuring that out. But that's definitely something we'll be using a lot more in the future.
Yes, I think it's certainly the one to watch, isn't it, in terms of where we're going over the coming year. And I think we will probably turn on, yes, we do. We turn on to that as well in a few minutes. Deliana, can I ask the same question to you in terms of market intelligence? What are you guys doing to make sure that your product is still hitting that sweet spot?
Yes, of course. As Claire was mentioning, AI and business intelligence tools are very useful, and we are using that. But we also notice that since we work in an industry where trends are born, like we see the changes happening in real time, for us it's still very useful, a good CRM. Like looking at the data of our actual guests is still a really useful tool, because you see things that maybe you would not even imagine, but you start noticing patterns through your actual guests. Because we always think to our prospective guests as something far from us, but they are actually already with us, in this segment at least.
Yes, it's amazing how many people don't actually look in their own database and don't necessarily realise just how much valuable information is within your own trends that are sitting there. I really find that quite surprising.
Can I add
Sure.
to this as well, just to touch on the AI and the customer review piece, because I think that's an area where we see a lot of opportunity. There's so much noise out there in terms of feedback from customers in so many different places, and how do we utilize AI to get that real-time feedback on an ongoing basis? So not just for future trends, but also for to make adjustments on, day by day to what's happening on the road. But then also we have, in terms of data intelligence, we are also, we partner with Qualtrics to start a biannual survey that we do now with 18 to 35-year-olds in the US and Canada to really, on an ongoing basis, see what they're valuing, what's important to them, and then we're quite quick to make changes to our programs based on that, and yeah.
And I think it's very interesting. We at WISE have looked quite a lot at AI, and certainly at our other conference that we do in February, specifically for budget accommodation and for hostels, is we've looked at AI. How is that going to affect the operation of running hostels? Is it going to take over jobs? Can we use AI and robotics to clean bedrooms? Can we look at it for rates and so on? And I think we've had some very interesting comments on that coming out over this. It's not the place to go through that, but I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards about it. Social media, what's in and what's not so in terms of the social media for the youth market? What are the newest and most important challenges on the marketing front for this one? Who'd like to pick up on that one first?
I think what's in is authenticity. So, moving away from the traditional kind of studio content creation, using more, of course, customer-generated input, but also really moving away from using social media to sell ourselves. We feel social media is about more of sparking interest, sparking awareness, and then they can do the research and see if we're the company for them, but we shouldn't be selling to them through social media. So authenticity, I think, is important.
Which has been around for many years in this particular marketplace. They don't want to see the touched-up photographs and the special angle that doesn't show the factory next door or whatever it happens to be. Yeah. And Daliana, from you?
Yeah, we noticed the same thing. Like, guests wants a recommendation from people they can relate to. It's no longer the influencer with the perfect life. That is not resonating with them that much at the moment. They prefer recommendation from people like maybe more niche influencers, but people they can relate to.
Thank you. And Claire, social media for your company?
I mean, absolutely the same, user-generated content. We're also using podcasts now as well.
Yep.
Podcasts is attracting a lot of customers. So we have podcasts, videos as well. Good videos, user-generated videos are also really appealing, and we get a lot of viewers with those. So a similar thing. We're moving at Facebook. No. That's not where we're finding our customers anymore. So podcasts, videos, user-generated content. Very
much all in agreement. Yeah. I'd like to touch on the LGBTQ+. That youth segment really is quite a considerable portion of young travellers, and certainly in our last research survey, it constituted around 16% of the respondents. We also discovered that LGBTQ+ travellers are more likely to be on holiday and spend more on their trips rather than other segments or other parts of the youth travellers. How can travel brands avoid rainbow washing and provide genuine support for LGBTQ travellers? And are there any examples in your own businesses or other examples that you've seen that you admire that we can discuss today? Daliana, can I come to you first with that?
Yeah, of course. For us, it's a bit different because we are a hostel, so we are a physical place, so we can actually be a safe space. Like, if people come in, they have to know they can be safe. And this is not only like by campaign or words. Like, our staff is actually trained to acknowledge and address situation of discrimination or call for help if needed. So if someone comes and stay with us, they know that this is a safe space. We also, like in this case, have to give the credits to our events team that is organizing events with local LGBTQ+ communities and association, cultural association, to actually give them a space where they can meet other members of the local community, and of course they wanted to open their events to the rest of the community and to the travelers. So we were honored to be a place where they wanted to join to host these events.
And Christina?
I think it is, whether it's that group of people or if it's political views or religious background, whatever it might be, I think it's really, it has to come from a foundation from within the organization as well, that everything, not only the travel experience that you provide, but also the environment that we provide in terms of pre-travel, on-tour, and post-travel, breathes inclusivity, respect for people from different backgrounds, gender identities, sexual orientation, and it has to be core to the DNA as well, I think, of the organization to really bring that across. But we certainly have it, as a tour operator, we have the dynamic not of just the individual feeling comfortable in a certain space, but also the dynamics of a group together. Yeah. So it's also something that we kind of speak about in our materials, that we expect that respectfulness and an openness to diversity within the group. And it's actually a reason that we could send somebody off of a tour if we find that they're not adhering to that as well.
And Claire, how does Corry address this?
I mean, our product range is not niche in that respect. It's open to everybody. But I think again, inclusivity in our marketing, but also the role of our travel advisors, if and when their advice is asked, to give some of the background to different countries that you visit and how religion or culture or that might affect the experience depending upon your own beliefs or your own background.
And I think the nice thing is that this is actually very much the whole ethos of youth travel. It was set up originally, or at least Wise Travel Confederation came from associations that were set up in the late 1940s after the Second World War, specifically to encourage young people to travel and to experience other cultures and to experience other countries and how other people lived, so that they got a better understanding, cultural understanding of other societies. And this is exactly really what we're talking about here. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on now and look into the middle term a little bit. And some of this we've sort of already looked at. We're looking at sort of over now until the end of this decade, sort of 2030, that sort of thing. We've talked about AI, and I'd like to just drill in a little bit more on AI if we can. How is it being adopted into your businesses? And is there a particular use or a practical application of AI that you expect will change and take more of a hold within your business over the coming few years? Claire, can I come to you on that one?
I mean, I think if you look at the way we operate, at the heart of everything we do is the personal touch. So I don't see AI replacing that sense of security, that advice, be it on visas, be it on cultural events, be it on political changes. Things are changing very rapidly at the moment on the political scene, which means that things can change from day to day as to where you can travel, where you can't travel. That personal approach, that sense of security we're able to give still with that personal touch, which is very much what we do. I think where AI can help us is to, with some of those mundane tasks, so that we can be more efficient, so that we can actually use time on the booking process, on the advice. So use AI to enhance what we do, but still not take away that personal touch that is why we still feel we're relevant.
Yeah, and I think that's also a very important point here is to, and again, it comes back to one of the conversations we've had at one of our previous conferences. Will AI take away the jobs? And I don't think it will. It might take some processing elements out, but it does leave more time for that person-to-person contact, which I think is important in this industry. Christine, what about AI within EF? You're a big company.
I completely agree with Claire. I think that it's a vehicle to ensure that we're spending our time on the pieces that we do best, which is the personal touch and the fine-tuning and making sure that it's a very personalized experience for people. But of course, there are lots of opportunities to become more efficient and optimize, with many, many travelers, optimizing the combination of how we put those nuts and bolts that I was referring to before, the accommodation chains and the flights, et cetera, to optimize some of those pieces so that we can spend time on the finer pieces of it. Clearly also in customer service, there's opportunities, right, to ensure that our staff are able to focus on the more difficult conversations versus the easier responses. And as I said before, I think also in terms of mining feedback so that we can move really quickly to make improvements as we go.
And I think it does also help you to find things that the standard traditional search, internet search, may not find. Certainly, I'm finding that the likes of ChatGPT are producing far better results on a general search than the traditional search engines are doing.
Yeah.
Deliana, how's AI affecting the hospitality and the accommodation element?
I agree with both of them regarding the customer service side, because yes, with online reputation and easier questions, it can free up time for actual staff to interact with people and have more time to interact with guests. But as an accommodation, one of the main uses of AI is, of course, revenue management and dynamic pricing, because dynamic pricing is already established, and a human cannot be on top of every price change of every night of every hostel. So this is one of the fields where AI is one of the possible answers.
Yeah.
Or maybe the only one.
Okay, I'm going to push on a little bit because I've just realised we've only got 11 minutes and 52 seconds left, approximately. I want to just quickly touch on climate change. It's a big issue at the moment. You know, weather patterns are becoming more obvious and more destructive, and I think we've really seen that in the last 6 to 12 months in terms of wildfires and floods. When do you think that the real concern about climate change will kick in? Because it isn't at the moment, let's be quite fair about it. When will young travellers, do you think, really start to reduce their footprint? And when will providers make those changes to travel to make it less carbon positive? And I completely acknowledge that those changes are going to be costly, so that's going to be the first challenge. Claire, can I start with you on that one?
I mean, we're talking now about the effect of youth travel, but I think we also need to look at the effect of business travel.
Totally, yes. It's a bigger topic than we're covering here today. You're absolutely right.
I mean, youth travel intrinsically has always looked at the better option. You know, their footprint is much smaller. You could look at frequent flyer programs encouraging people to fly, business travel. There's many other areas. I think ultimately, when policy dictates it, everybody will have to do something about it. But right now, it's still price sensitive. And with the youth and travel market, price is something they still look at. You know, you can look at carbon offsetting, you can look at CO2. We are actually measuring now the footprint of some of our adventure trips to see what is it? What is the actual effect? So we are looking into it for sure, but I think policy change is ultimately what's going to really drive it.
And do we really think that governments have got enough motivation to make that policy change? Because I don't see it at the moment. You know, because we know it's going to cost more fundamentally, and everybody's trying to make everything cheaper. And certainly, I agree with you that intrinsically youth travellers are looking for cheaper. They are looking for carbon-reduced travel. But fundamentally, when they're confronted with an 8-hour train journey or a 1-hour flight, the flight still tends to win out against the train journeys. Christina, can I come to you on this topic? It's a thorny issue, I think, that's going to be around for a few more years.
Absolutely. There's a lot that needs to be done. I would also expand, I think that the youth travel, they are concerned about climate change and the carbon footprint. They're also concerned about responsible travel, sustainable travel in general. I think when we look at our demographic, they place importance in their carbon footprint, but also in supporting local communities, animal welfare, all of these different things. They say that they value use of electrical vehicles, right, and more sustainable travel options. In our research, we find that more than 70% of the US and Canadian audience at least say this. I think the challenge is what they do with that, right? And when will they start putting their money where their responsible travel mouth is, as it were. I think there's also a big challenge. We've, over the last year, we wanted to start auditing our accommodation partners to look at kind of what adoption there is of certifications and green policies. And we found that we had, it looked fairly positive, but what we also found, which was really eye-opening, is how difficult it is in that space. So beyond kind of what governments do and regulations put in place, I think there's also a big effort that needs to be made from the industry as a whole to make this easier also for providers to understand that jungle of certifications. My colleague is here who's done this audit for us, and she will speak wholeheartedly to this point. But I think there's a huge opportunity there, Justin, and what voices can we have in that as kind of industry leaders, let's say.
And of course, it's only a very, very small part of the overall problem anyway. And that's, as to Claire's point about all of the other types of travel, business travel and so on, not to mention industry, cars in general, heating homes, insulation.
It's a very thorny, a thorny topic, but it's a maze to even just start trying to set some industry standards.
And it needs that top-down leadership. It needs government leadership, I believe. Until the governments really wire into sustainability properly, it's just never going to be, it's never really going to go forward at the pace it needs to.
I think the United Nations now have their measurement of sustainability, which they recently introduced, and I think that's the first sort of common unilateral measurement system, because there are so many different certifications that if we actually have one base level that the whole industry can use, because until we have a base level, it's very difficult to measure when we're all using different measurement tools. So like you said, it is a jungle. There are so many different ways.
And for accommodation specifically, it's complicated and it's costly to get certification, so that's a challenge. So we're trying to figure out how can we help support our partners to get on the right path in ways that at least we can kind of see happening. You mentioned also measuring carbon footprint. We've also partnered with MyClimate. And as a global organization, so EF is broader than the travel products that we represent here today, but as a global organization, we are partnering with MyClimate to measure our full carbon footprint and to get on a credible path to reductions, really, but creating that baseline. And we're also starting to use that for some of our the tour products as well, to see what impact are we having over time, and what do people choose as well. If we can show that in the shop window, what will people start to choose?
And Deliana, from the accommodation perspective, I've been talking about you.
I agree with what was just said. As Yellow Square, we are in the process of becoming a B Corp, but as was mentioned before, it's not an easy process. We did the first assessment, and we did not reach the level of 80 points at the first assessment, as it usually happens for corporations. And yes, we saw that it's difficult for us also with the relations with our supplier. Since it's so difficult for them to get certification, consequently, it's also for us. So it's a very complicated topic. We are doing our best, but without policy changes and unified certifications, we will take a bit of time to get there.
Well, I think it's a big topic that's going to be going on for quite some time, and I'd imagine it's been covered fairly extensively here at ITB over this week as well, but thank you very much for that. So I'm just going to push forward now. We've got a few minutes left. We're going to try and look now into the longer term. So this is where we need a little bit of the sort of crystal ball gazing. What do you think is going to be the most exciting change that young travellers will bring to travel and tourism by the end of this decade? Claire?
I think the fact that young travellers are still very resilient. So despite the fact that there are right now a crazy amount of different things going on, I think they'll still want to explore, and in the face of what's going on, I think they'll want to explore even more, actually, to have a perspective, and their own perspective, on what's actually happening. So I think that's always been something that youth travel have wanted to do, but I actually see that accelerating.
I completely agree with you on that one. Yep. Christina?
I'm nodding here. I think as well, I think we've always seen an openness for otherness, interest and appreciation for diversity in this group of travelers. But I agree, I think the current environment has the potential to amplify that even further. Then coming back to the last topic, I'm kind of hopeful that this will be the generation that puts their money where their mouth is when it comes to sustainable travel, and hopefully start making choices that also encourage all of us to deliver more sustainable product.
I agree with that. As now, all the guests expect the tech experience to be seamless. In the future, they will expect sustainable practices to be not the norm, but expected.
Yeah.
Something that they expect all across the industry, not only in the youth travel segment.
Yeah. And sort of pretty much as one of the last questions here, what do you think is the most exciting transition that's currently underway that that the effects will be felt over the future years and really by the end of this decade? Or do you think we've actually already discussed that? I get a feeling
AI and sustainability are big topics.
Yeah.
And I think if we knew exactly what was coming by 2030, we could bet some money on it now and become very rich.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to see different destinations emerging. I mean, for us, South Korea, Japan, and we talk about people being interested in destinations, but what we're also seeing is people being interested in trends.
Yes.
Japan, it's food. South Korea, it's the culture, K-pop. So aside from just wanting to visit a destination now, we find people wanting to go to South Korea because they're interested in a certain element of a culture within that destination. 20 years ago, people weren't talking about Korea as a destination. Now it's one of our top, everybody wants to go to Korea, everybody wants to go to Japan. So seeing these new emerging destinations driven by something very specific, be it, right now we've got influencers who are leading trips and having their followers go because they're influenced and interested in something very niche as well, like K-pop, like food. So these are new trends that we're also seeing.
And it comes back to the community building again, right? Finding like-minded people. And I know that Percy said that influencers are maybe not the traditional influencers, if you can say traditional at this point, but the influencers who bring their followers because they have that shared passion for something. I think another cultural element is some of the TV shows, right? The Emily in Paris effect. White Lotus, we just launched a White Lotus tour to Thailand.
That's right, everybody.
Shogun, all of these are driving. And again, it's about how pop culture and social media spark interest, right? And then we should be there to make it affordable and available to them to do it in the most sustainable way.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for listening to us today. I hope you've enjoyed this session. We will be around for a few minutes after the session if anybody wants to come and ask any questions. And I'd like to thank my team for what I hope was a very informative session. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.